There are few towns in Europe that have been towns from their very beginning. Among them is Karlovac, built in 1579 in the form of a six-pointed star. It was built as a military fortress which guarded the doors of Europe against Turkish invasion. The Karlovac Beer Festival, which takes place every autumn, is just one of the ways the town fosters its centuries-old tradition in crafts. Now in the 5th century of its existence, Karlovac is expanding not only in size, but also in establishing a modern industry, which exports throughout the world products of high technology and top quality. The most famous example of this type of expansion is Jugoturbina. It was this factory that 4 decades ago manufactured the first series of diesel engines in Yugoslavia. And today, Jugoturbina's production of power equipment has won it an international reputation in machine construction. The medium-speed diesel engine, manufactured under license of the Swiss firm Sulzer, is one of 50 engines which are manufactured to power emergency standby generators in nuclear power stations. The present production program includes engines with piston diameters of 400, 250 and 200 millimeters. License rights allow the production of engines with power outputs from 400 to 14,000 kilowatts. Their manufacture undergoes the strictest control methods, which are otherwise applied only in the aviation and space industries. Engine manufacture starts with the delivery of the raw material, casting and forging on the basis of Jugoturbina's technical documentation. All semi-products of large dimensions are taken from the in-process inventory to the workshop for heavy machining. The costly forgings of the crankshafts and the castings of various casings and the many elements for engine manufacture are traced and checked for machining. Individual sets which are ready for assembly are again checked at the tracing panel after machining. For example, the parallel and coaxial tolerances of crankshafts and camshafts of a total length of up to 10 meters doesn't surpass a few hundredths of a millimeter. The first machine in the technological line of crankshafts, known as a guillotine, carries out rough turning. Jugoturbina finalizes crankshafts not only for the engines it manufactures itself, but also for other manufacturers, both in Yugoslavia and abroad. For the machining of large series of cylinder liners, highly productive special lathes are used, which provide the highest precision of machining. Jugoturbina constantly tries to modernize the manufacture of engines in its production program. Its modern plants also produce engine parts for other manufacturers. Jugoturbina specializes not only in cylinder liners, but also in plain bearings, complete fuel systems, starting air systems, cylinder covers, connecting rods, and so on. Highly productive machining requires highly productive measuring techniques. The machine for measuring cylinder liners and similar components of previously programmed forms is much more reliable than manual measuring. The result of the measuring is a certificate with measurement data. But the perfectly precise operations continue. A few large boring and milling machines with numeric control completely machine the largest casings, oil sumps, blocks of small engines, and similar parts. With just one fastening on the work table and without moving, All smoothing and drilling, reaming, threading and milling of the bearing seat is carried out with special angular heads. This guarantees maximum precision of machining and considerable time saving in the preparations for setting the machine and in checking the control results of the machining. Parts of large slow-speed marine engines of other manufacturers are also machined here. Cylinder covers are machined on small horizontal boring and milling machines. These forgings need many kinds of machining: drilling, smoothing, milling, reaming and threading. And again, control at the beginning and end of every operation. Jugoturbina specializes in the production of connecting rods, both for its own engines and for engines of other Yugoslav manufacturers. After rough machining, the various engine parts undergo heat treatment. Small parts of special steel, like inlet and exhaust valves, are put in furnaces with baskets. Hardening is carried out in oil and salt baths, which in some of the equipment shown here is situated within the furnace. So there is cleanliness and order in this modern heat treatment. The heat treatment process is controlled and run by a processor, so the quality of supervision is incomparably better than human supervision in standard plants. The attendants have to check the important parameters only from time to time and to react to any unusual occurrence, which the machine itself signals to them with its built-in alarm. This provides a precise diagram and data printout. The layer of lead bronze on multi-layer bearings is cast in a special centrifuge with induction heating. Jugoturbina's plain bearings factory produces plain bearings of its own design. They have a high bearing capacity and modern constructive characteristics. In the machining workshop, the machine for final machining of the plane surfaces of the bearing has its spindle precisely hydrodynamically centered, which achieves tolerances of 1/1000th of a millimeter. The bearings undergo visual inspection, and then a special apparatus checks their seating and the bonding between the white metal and the steel and bronze base. The hardness is checked, as well as the dimensions in both free and installed conditions. Jugoturbina also manufactures precise and special products. This plant manufactures elements of fuel pumps, nozzles and fuel valves, inlet and safety valves, elements of control equipment, built-on fuel pumps, gear oil pumps, built-on centrifugal cooling pumps, and so on. Since they have to operate under high working pressures, all sealing surfaces must be lapped, honed, and finally machined together with micron clearances. The cross-section of a model of a nozzle illustrates the work, and the injection test shows one of the controls before installation in the engine. Elements of fuel pumps with one or more control grooves are produced for fuel systems. The finished elements for engines of our own production are installed in the complete fuel pumps, which then undergo detailed testing and adjustment for congruous functioning with the throttle. Series pre-assembly of crankshafts and camshafts, pistons and connecting rods, as well as other sets, speeds up the assembly process and makes it more economic. The engine production process runs continuously and parallelly. While the parts of one engine are being machined, the parts of another are being assembled into sets, and those of another are undergoing final assembly. When the engine starts running, the pressures and temperatures of the exhaust, the cooling water and the lubricating oil are checked at entry to and exit from the engine, as well as output at various loads. In addition to these routine and obligatory testings of all the important technical characteristics of the engine, other measurements are also taken in order to check the critical points and to ensure the homologation of innovations. All this adds to the overall improvement of the engine. Individual assemblies, such as crankshafts and camshafts, cylinder liners, various bearings, gears, and many other elements, are mounted carefully and gradually onto the massive casing, the central part of the engine. A finished 12-cylinder medium-speed 4-stroke engine has more than 10,000 parts, with a total mass of about 85 tons. Final assembly is the last stage in the complex process of manufacturing an engine, when the prepared assemblies and components take their final positions. So that these mechanisms can operate together for 20 years, with operations being repeated 12 to 20 and more times a second, a quality of machining and other treatments must be achieved that befits the tradition of constructing Swiss watches. Jugoturbina is associated with Sulzer of Switzerland and Pielstick of France through license contracts, and so has taken over the knowledge and experience of these world leaders in engine manufacture. On the basis of these business links and its own 40 years of experience in engine manufacture, Jugoturbina has completely kept pace with the development of engine manufacturing in the world. This is shown in the ability to use very heavy fuels with a high efficiency, that is, low fuel consumption, and further improvements are expected in the future. These engines are outstanding for their high concentration of power in relation to their size and mass, and exceptionally low wear of the cylinder liners and pistons, as of all the other parts that are subject to wear. Jugoturbina has exported to 38 countries throughout the world over 1,500 diesel engines, 2-stroke and 4-stroke, marine and stationary, with outputs of 100 kilowatts up to even 7,000 kilowatts. During their installation, Jugoturbina experts supervise and train staff and carry out servicing during the engine's working life if necessary. In the series of complex operations which we have followed during this film, we have come to the last, testing the output and control characteristics of the engine in the testbed station. After a trial run in the testbed station, the engines are partly dismantled in order to check the state of the engine. Then it is assembled and packed for transport. In a ship engine room, these engines may be for electric generators or main propulsion drive. And in stationary plants, such as pump stations or electric power stations, they may serve for continual use or for standby, as in nuclear power stations. While in ships' engine rooms, the engines work day and night for 20 years, in nuclear power stations, their life passes in constant readiness to start taking over the load within 10 seconds of the alarm signal in the event of breakdown, and in less than a minute, to completely, safely supply the electrical energy needs of the station. Today, more than 600 ships with one or more Jugoturbina engines are sailing the rivers and seas of the world. And in all important ports in the world, spare parts can be delivered in the shortest time only on the basis of identification of the engine. Jugoturbina is aware that its reputation is built into its engines. Experience, staff, consulting and servicing make sure that this reputation is maintained. The blue color of Jugoturbina is a color of reliability. It's a color which has spread the reputation of Yugoslav engine construction throughout the world.